Fools for Thought.
Hello, everybody, and good day. Welcome to another episode of Fools for Thought. This is episode number 11, show where we take a look at everyday topics with just a touch of sarcasm and humor. Today, we are going to talk about the recent discrimination case coming out of Indiana and the bill that Mike Pence signed into law that its detractors have compared to the legalization of discrimination. And to do this, I would actually like to tell you a little bit of a story. I had an interesting discussion yesterday with, a now ex-Facebook friend of mine. To protect the name of the guilty, let's just call this person Peter. Peter gets the majority of his news through such, hard-hitting websites like Think Progress and the Huffington Post and the Washington Post. And, of course, is a very proud Obama-supporting liberal. And as such, this person can naturally be assumed to be a tender-hearted, compassionate person. He just loves everyone and everything and hates discrimination. I mean, just absolutely cannot stand discrimination. But recently, Peter posted a message on his Facebook wall about how proud he was of a CEO of a tech company, and let's just call this tech company Tenderhearted Incorporated, who pulled their business from Indiana after the recent signing of a law by Governor Mike Pence, the Religious Freedom Law, that, according to its detractors, like I said before, would essentially legalize discrimination. So as a comment to that post, I wrote a message in an attempt to prove that really the concept of discrimination is not just a one-way street. It actually goes both ways. I wrote that the CEO of Tenderhearted Incorporated, the person that he was just so proud of, in essence, discriminated against Indiana by pulling its business from the state, and that the government should, step in and do something about it. Tenderhearted Incorporated, I wrote, has absolutely no right to pull its business from the state of Indiana, just like businesses should have no right to refuse service to anybody. Right? I'm not being a hypocrite here. I'm just applying the law evenly throughout all layers of business. Well, this message upset Peter, and upset him greatly. He proceeded to do three things as a response to my comment. In order. Number one, he called me an idiot. Number two, he invited me to eat shit. And number three, he promptly removed the thread and banned me from his Facebook account. And he also accused me of actually supporting a position that a business should, in fact, refuse service to people because of whom they love. Now, unfortunately, this is what happens when you let your emotions get in the way of your mind. Now, Peter is a smart guy, but when you let your emotions rule your life, you end up angry and frustrated and hating the world most of the time, often resorting to the use of these grade school name-calling tactics as your only response. And truthfully, that's no way to live. Of course, I in no way insinuated that I actually support a business discriminated against anybody. But logic and objectivity here has no place in a political debate where emotions rule your position. In truth, the point that I was making is that the CEO is effectively discriminating against the state of Indiana because the governor of the state took a position that the CEO does not like. So why is this discrimination okay, but it is not okay for a business owner to refuse service to somebody whom they do not like? This is a different situation, all right? Well, actually, no, it's not. The state of Indiana is essentially the customer of Tenderhearted Incorporated. The state took a position that the CEO did not agree with, and the CEO responded by refusing service to the state. Ironically, this is the exact scenario under which the so-called anti-discrimination activists would have the government step in and intervene if the situation were between a business and an individual customer. And, of course, as believers in the free market, we understand that discrimination is bad for business, even if discrimination were legal. All discrimination completely legal. The government never steps in. You can do whatever the hell you want to do. Even if that were the case, the large majority of businesses still would not discriminate, and for what should be obvious reasons. Businesses operate essentially to make money. So the minute that somebody finds out that a business owner refused service to somebody based on the color of their skin or their origin or their gender or sexual orientation or preferences, they'll be run out of business in a flash. Why? Well, customers don't like doing business with racist bastards. But ironically here, these anti-discrimination laws are essentially enabling these very racist bastards. If the business cannot legally discriminate, they will naturally continue doing business with those that they hate. Customers are handing over their hard-earned money to business owners who hate their guts. And those business owners may even be contributing to organizations that these customers would abhor, all because anti-discrimination laws require commerce. So what Peter is inadvertently doing is he's essentially supporting an anti-free market system that keeps bigots behind the wheel of businesses and keeps customers ultimately forking over their hard-earned money to these bigots unknowingly, of course. Now, I understand that it makes Peter feel better about himself that he opposes discrimination, and that's great. I also oppose discrimination in all of its forms. However, I do not support the unintended consequences of these laws that wind up actually hurting the very people whom they were designed to supposedly protect. But the problem here is, in order to observe this dreadful phenomenon, a person must first remove the emotional cloak that prevents the brain from taking hold. And I tell you all the best to you, Peter. I wish you luck, and I hope you go places and you're okay with what you believe. But all you're really doing is supporting the problem that we're all faced with here. Alex, what's your take on this? Did Mike Pence overstep his boundaries by signing this bill into law, which is being modified at the moment, by the way? Or do you believe that he was right on point, that businesses should be able to run their business the way they see fit, even if it does mean refusing service to some customers that they might not like?
You have two sides of this argument. You have one side is, hey, you should be able to do whatever you want with your own private property. If you don't want to give business to people, then don't. And assuming that those people will go to another business, now you have a competitor with an advantage. You're a bigot against some, they're a bigot against nobody, therefore their market is bigger than yours. Eventually they will overtake you. That's just the rule of business. I mean, that's how Walmart became Walmart, right? The other half of it, though, is that at a state level, even if the law said you can now discriminate against blacks or you can discriminate against Jews, you can't. The federal law actually supersedes this. This law was passed with the obvious intention of discrimination against gays, because gays are not a protected group at the federal level. Sexual orientation is still not protected. Gender is, other things are, but that is not protected at the federal level. So therefore, yes, it is a bunch of social conservatives in Indiana who are trying to say we don't want gays and now we just want to push them out of our stores. And that's what everyone's reacting to. They're really reacting to that concept, the concept that that's so bad. And then you have all these people stand up and go, see, look how good we are. We're going to oppose this. But the reality is, Tim Cook writing his little letter, he's a hypocrite. He's the biggest hypocrite of them all. Apple does major business in Saudi Arabia where being homosexual is a death penalty. And why doesn't he pull his business from that country? Really, these businesses are all doing it for it's a stunt. It's a stunt to get more popularity, to have them seen better in the public eye for when they do shady stuff. Apple pointing you to, look how good we stand up for gays. Look, Tim Cook's gay. Look at this. Don't look at our factories where people commit suicide en masse. Don't look at that. That's really what it is. So I don't even want to talk about that part of the discussion. Just throw it out the window. It's a game. They're using politics to get money, like smart businesses should. So throw that out of the way. His pride in whoever's doing it, in Tenderheart Inc. is nothing more than a political scheme in order to earn money.
It's all business, yeah.
Just like when businesses go, we donate a percentage of our proceeds to charity. Why? Why don't you just cut the cost of your product and let me donate to charity then? Why are you taking my money and donating in your name? Hypocritical, right? I actually actively avoid doing business with businesses that do that, because I feel it's very disingenuous to take my money and then donate it and then claim success for it. Just make the product cheaper. But anyway, Coming back over to the actual governor of Indiana and the actual state legislature, this is obviously just a ploy to get more conservative voters to vote for them, especially with the upcoming 2016 elections. Banning gay marriage, they've seen it won't work in state constitutions because they get struck down by the Supreme Court, either of their state or the United States Supreme Court. So it's going to happen, and they know it. And now they're just trying to dig in their heels. What everyone misses, though, is that if you removed discrimination laws, anti-discrimination laws, just abolish them tomorrow, places wouldn't get more bigoted. Certain areas of small backwater places would, where most of these minorities don't actually exist at, would. But the rest of the country wouldn't, and you'd actually ferret out the bigots pretty quickly, because they would be the ones who actually would discriminate openly. They would be stupid enough to actually say no, all this stuff. And what would happen is now they're no longer getting all that money funneled to them. Now they can't back marriage first, organizations that try to keep gay marriage banned. They don't back all these other agencies that most liberal-minded people would not want to even back, but they do anyway. I'm reminded of how most organic farmers are Republican. Most people who eat organic produce and who do that lifestyle are liberal, and they vehemently hate the Republican Party, but they support them. They are by far the largest supporter of them. They donate more money to it and the anti-GMO fund than actually conservatives do through the profits that they funnel through these organizations, right?
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
It is, and it's really him. It's the same things here. We know that if in any modern city today, that if you were to shine the beacon of bigotry on any one particular business, that business is pretty much done. You're going to close your doors the next few months. You're gone. And the problem is we can't even find these people. I'm reminded of the phrase, I fear more a closeted racist than one who's open. Because the one who's open, you can track, you can see what they're doing. The one who's closeted and doesn't say anything, they're operating behind the scenes. They're doing it in much more smart and methodical ways to keep their stranglehold on society. And really, these are allowed to live. And this law, ironically, was ferreting them out. Yes, it's put on by these people. It's put out there. It's a law that, while the written word of the law doesn't actually do anything, really all it allows you to do is just say, based on my religious preferences, I don't feel I need to serve you. That's all it allows you to do, right? But it's obviously being targeted towards gays, and it's really broadcasting. Anybody who would invoke this law would immediately be saying, I hate gays. And I mean, it's just like, shooting a beacon up in the sky. Bigot, right there. And the funniest part is...
You'd be driven out of business faster than you would know what you would hit.
Yeah. And the funniest part about it is now they can't be named and shamed. You can't post a website with saying, hey, these are all the businesses that have experienced discrimination recently that don't serve gays. You can't discriminate against them. So that's the other half of this. If a group of Ku Klux Klan people come into a black-owned business underneath these ideal anti-discrimination laws, they would force to be served in their full attire because they are not causing any problems. They aren't doing anything. They're just simply wearing their hoods and robes. And black families would have to serve them. And is that right? Well, people go, well, sure, but really look at it. Is that right? I mean, do you not want that black family to go, no, get out the door? And if you say, yes, they should, then now you're just being a bigot yourself. You're just doing it in the way you prefer the bigotry to be done. Whether or not it's more enlightened to exclude hate groups or not. I mean, we don't want hate groups. Obviously, hate groups are wrong, but you are doing the same thing they are, just in a more palpable way to yourself. That's really what it is. You've gone to the level of the ends justify the means, and you've become Machiavellian, and you've decided that, hey, I will use my force and influence to determine what I deem is proper for society, regardless of who gets hurt.
Yeah, really it all comes down to a simple question. I mean, do you believe a business should be able to run their business the way they see fit and refuse service to absolutely anybody for any reason? Do you believe that should be the law of the land, or are you generally supportive of some of these more wide-reaching, I guess, anti-discrimination laws at the federal level?
I think it gives even more basic than that. I think it comes down to is, do you genuinely hate the free market? Do you generally despise the fact that the free market can do something in a way that you might not like? In other words, do you not like control? I mean, do you like control? If you don't like having to have everything controlled, the free market is probably a pretty good approach to. Everyone interacts, and out of all those interactions that are chaos, essentially, order comes out of it, right? Or are you a person who believes that, hey, we should have everything under lock and control? Everyone should be forced to do this, like this, like this, like this. And of course, that's using very harsh terminology. They'll never say forced, but the word is forced, like a king tells everybody what to do in their country, right?
It really is, yeah.
And it really comes down to that, is if you hate the free market, and it's fine, you can hate the free market, don't dress it up as something else, though. Don't masquerade it as something else. If you don't like capitalism, if you don't like free market, if you don't like choice, cool. Most people don't in this country. There is no such thing as a party of choice. There's the Democrats and there's the Republicans. I want the world in my way. I want the world in my way. That's what it is, and that's fine. I mean, you fall into that group, but do acknowledge your bias. Do understand that you don't want people to decide for themselves, that you know better than they are, and therefore you will tell them what to do. You will dictate how they live, where they live, who they serve, what money they'll have, and where they'll, everything. I'm often reminded of, this exact same mentality when it comes to almost everything in our government. Anything that has to do with any sort of interaction between people. Nobody wants the two-way street. Nobody wants freedom. They want the one-way street. They just don't want the one-way street that somebody else provides. Religion in schools. Nobody wants that, right? And some people do, but they don't want somebody else's religion. They want their religion in schools.
Yeah, exactly. As long as it's their religion, then it's okay.
Exactly. So, this is another example of it. And so, kind of going off in a tangent in that direction, but I really am trying to distill it down to the basic motivations in individuals. And really, the people who hate this law for the law, not for the reasons it's being put in. The intent behind the law is obviously wrong and obviously corrupt. And I mean, you can tell that from a million miles away. But just the general concept of I should, as a business, have the right to run my business as I see fit, really don't like the fact that people can believe differently than they do. And they'll use the excuse or the umbrella of for the public good or to protect the weak or some other, arrogant, really, and it's arrogance. They know so much better, so therefore you must do this. Everyone must adhere to this. And I just don't understand one thing. So we lived for, several thousand years under a form of serfdom and socialism and dictatorships. I mean, the state controlling, whether it was a king, whether it was an oligarchy, whether it was some other form. Democracy was relatively not even heard of. Even in the 1776, it wasn't heard of. I mean, really, we really haven't pushed the democracy until like the late 1800s when actual real democracy came around. The very beginnings of it. And I would even argue not until the early 1900s when women were able to vote. We really didn't have true democracy. But how much worse is your life now with the free market and capitalism and democracy than it was 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 100 years ago? How much better are we off than North Korea? I mean, I don't understand that. I mean, that is the totalitarian extreme.
Absolutely.
The dictator determines who gets served.
Unfortunately, freedom tends to ebb and flow. I mean, back in the 1700s, we obviously fought a war for independence. We established the government that was designed around the principles of freedom and liberty, and as long as you're not killing your neighbor or stealing from your neighbor, you should be able to do whatever you want. And then as people, as politicians, and as the larger populace started to figure out that they can really control this government to what they want it to be, we have slowly risen up and closer to a I don't know, maybe a France or a Sweden. I don't want to use the term North Korea quite yet, but really we are on that upward slope where our freedoms and our liberties are getting less and less and less numerous. I don't want to see the day where we have to fight a revolution yet again, just like we did in the 1700s. But I don't know. Eventually, it might come to that, and that frightens me terribly.
Well, it should frighten you terribly. And while I'm not going to go to that extreme and talk about that subject, I do want to mention that, with freedom comes excess. With freedom comes danger. With freedom comes everything, because that's the concept of freedom. You can fail. You can fall. You can get hurt. Bad things can happen, just as good things can happen. And people, I don't think like that concept. I think people really want a Disney life. This is what's prescribed. There's no such thing as rich people that have more than what I have because I'm jealous. I don't want them to have more than what I have. There's no such thing as poor people because I don't want them to feel bad for what they have.
Everyone's on the same playing field.
Everyone's on the same playing field, and therefore all I have to do is just do my C-level work, my minimal work, and I have food and a house and a car and all my iPods and all my iPhones and my TV, and I'm okay. And
yeah, the problem is when in that society, who builds our bridges? Who does the hard sciences to actually make our society work?
Well, according to them, robots. They don't understand that you're concentrating the power then in the hands of the people who program the robots. Most people forget that there's always going to be somebody behind this, and the more and more you give up your hard work, the more and more you concentrate the hard work amongst smaller and smaller groups of people, the more and more powerful those people become. I'm very much reminded, because of this law, the concept of you need to tell people what to do, you need to guide them, you need to show them the path. And it's kind of funny. We spent through several thousand years of human history, million years if you really want to think about it, without people really having to be dictated and told what to do. And when they were, you saw the consequences of it. The Crusades, World War I, World War II. I mean, every violent, terrible act that's ever come in the world has never been because a bunch of people got together and decided, hey, we're going to work hard and get some sciences and get some education going. No, it's always been about, I want what you have, I'm going to kill you and take it. And I'm going to use all the people and I'm going to tell them to kill you. And that's what it's been. And here in this case, now taking it back and looping into our current situation, you have these group of these Republicans who don't like the fact that the government's telling them stop being bigots. They're going to continue being bigots no matter what. All the businesses, everyone's going to be a bigot. You're not going to stop them from being bigots. There's no way, no law you can pass, nothing you can do to these people that will stop them from hating gays. Just everyone needs to understand that. They're going to hate gays till the day they die, 99% assured. A few of them might come out of their comatose state, but most of them will hate. So this is their last-ditch effort to essentially have the government get out of their face and let them continue hating gays without anybody coming and bothering them. That is really what this law is about. They are using freedom on the backswing against freedom, essentially. And unfortunately, the people who are opposed to this law are doing the same thing just in the other direction. They don't want anyone to discriminate. They don't want anyone to have a choice, and so they're going to use their law. No one's talking about a swinging door that goes both ways. Nobody's talking about giving these businesses the opportunities to screw up and fail themselves. It's okay if a person fails, but it's not okay if a bank makes some bogus loans and crashes. People being, ha, 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 that bank deserved it, because they're rich and powerful. So let's see them come down. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. The people who have the power base in Indiana are the bigots. And everyone else doesn't like that. They just want to knock them down. Well, that's cool, but the Indiana people who are doing this also have the power base over the gays in Indiana. They're doing the same exact act to the gays in Indiana. It's essentially, you're just repeating the tier.
Well, I think the problem is what I had run into yesterday with Peter on Facebook is this is an emotional issue. They don't look at this with the power of their brains because even though they are smart people, emotions cloak their brain power, and it's all about, sheer raw emotion. And that very often, unfortunately, supersedes any kind of intellect or logic or pragmatic discussion that we might otherwise be able to have on this topic.
Yeah, I agree, because otherwise we're not talking about discrimination. I mean, that is what the law centers around, but really we're talking about the ability for the state or the individual to act. So either the state does it or the individual. Does the individual have the right to discriminate, and if so, do they have the right to be discriminated against? And I think a lot of this comes out of, when people hear the word discrimination, they assume that it can only be done against certain people, that it can only be done against minorities, that it can only be done against homosexuals, that it couldn't be done against white conservatives, because they're the power base. But very shortly, and these Republicans are very short-sighted for doing this. Very shortly, they're going to be the minority. By 2050, they're going to be less than a third of the population, and a lot of the money is going to be concentrated in other groups. So
yep,
they're effectively paving the path forward for people to discriminate against them, which I'm all for. I mean, if you want to discriminate and throw your weight around, go right ahead. I mean, we have a thing that's called, the law that prevents anybody from physically harming you, or even threatening and intimidating you. But, if you don't want to sell people your bagels, or if you don't want to buy somebody's bagels, that's fine by me. I don't really care about that. That should be free. You should be able to express yourself. And if you're so stupid as to be a bigot, you should be driven out of business. And if you're so stupid as to be a bigot against a particular kind of business because they are gay owned or whatever, they don't need your business. You know what I mean? They'll get it from elsewhere, So I don't have a problem with it, but I'm not thinking of it as we got to uplift these people. I don't see these people. I see people and the government. And the government is people. And so really you're talking about how do you let people do what people do. So there's one more thing I do want to bring up, though. The point that I hear a lot is, what if there's no other choices? What if everyone in this town's a bigot, and so someone who's gay there just doesn't get the opportunity to go order their pizza at a restaurant or get their cake and flowers? And the answer hit me really hard. So you're saying you can solve all forms of social discrimination this person has been involved in by your law that has been around since the 70s, by the way, modified slightly in the 80s. So we don't have, clearly because of this law, we don't have any problems. This person faces no issues because they can go buy a bagel at a store. Nobody takes his money and puts it towards an anti-gay fund. Nobody spits in his bagel before he gives it to him. Nobody does any of this stuff to this individual. I'm assuming obviously male. I mean, it could be also a female.
It's all nice and peachy.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say if a person did live in a situation like that, they go through a level of hell that you don't understand. And the ignorance and arrogance that people have to sit there and suggest that they can, through forcing people to sell other people pizzas, is so magnanimous and so grand that they can overcome the absolute bigotry this person faced probably since they were very small and had to go through a series of it as children, probably being, and I'm not going to use the word bullied because bullied is, haha, making fun of you. I'm talking beat up, probably molested more than likely, or preyed upon, because that's what sexual predators do. They find the weakest children and they prey upon them. Socially outcasted. Just when they went to class, nobody helped them do anything. Nobody stayed after school and cared about them. People told them they'd rather see them dead. I mean, this person lived with this for all their years of their life, and now you're telling me that you're going to come through with this law and strike it down and make his life all good? Seriously.
A simple law makes everything so much better, right?
That's the most disgusting part I find about this whole thing. The thought that, oh, we made progress today. No, you didn't make progress. That person's still suffering, and he's going to continue to suffer, and you don't understand how to fix it because you don't understand the problem. The problem isn't everyone smiling and waving at each other. That's not the problem. Real bigotry and real hatred go on behind the scenes, and it's quiet, and it's insidious, and it affects people on a day-to-day basis. And to sit here and say that this law is the source of all evil is to completely you're winning political points at that point, and that's all you care about. You just want to go, I feel good, I slammed that party in the face, look at me, look how good I am. And that's what you're saying. By, either in support of this law or support against this law, that's what really it is. The law is a bad law if you think about it. We shouldn't even have it. This should be the national law of the land. You can do whatever you want, don't harass and intimidate people, end of story, right? But we don't have that. Instead, we have a bunch of feel-good laws, either feel good because I want the whole world to be in my worldview, or I want the whole world to be all peachy keen, idealist worldview, that just ends up leaving these people who are suffering on the floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
part
disgusting.
of why you think these laws are still around is because we have these issues still remain in our society. We keep talking about them. The situation in Indiana just completely blew up, and people are getting emotional about it. And they may or may not change their vote the next time Mike Pence runs for governor again. And these kinds of really shallow emotional issues just remain in our society because that's what our politicians want. That's the easiest thing to talk about. It's always a lot more popular to talk about discrimination than something like, I don't know, foreign affairs or national defense. It's one of those easy hot button issues that really poke at the emotional stability or instability, as the case may be, of the American people. And that's really unfortunate.
And so far, the government hasn't been so grand and magnanimous that they've been able to make everyone equal. And you could argue, even though the strides that the government induction has made, we haven't been in a vacuum enough to see if it would have occurred without the government's prodding, if you will. Or if the government's prodding is simply the response of people. People aren't going to vote for anti-bigot policies unless they're anti-bigots themselves. So if 60% of the populace already isn't racist, and 40% is, and you pass all these laws, the 60% are going to follow them, just like they always would have, even without the law, and then the other 40% are still going to do what they do under the radar anyway. I mean, you're not making it harder on them. You're just making it harder to catch them, is really all you're doing. You're making it quieter.
Yeah, exactly. Anti-discrimination laws do not prevent somebody from hating somebody else. All it really does is keep that business doing business, taking the money from those who hate them. That's all these kinds of laws do. It's kind of ironic, and I think that if some customers realized some of the businesses that they do business with, where their money is ultimately being spent by some of these business owners who may not like them, they change their tune in a hurry.
Well, sure, but now you can't have that. In fact, under anti-discrimination laws, it's actually illegal for a business to tell somebody what they're doing with their money. They can't sit there and say, I support an anti-gay practice, because that is discrimination. They would get arrested. They know immediately that that's a bad bat, so they don't do it. So they just simply smile and go, ha-ha, and then they go. When they hire people, I've heard this time and time again, they'll hire the token black person because they have to under the law, and they'll treat them like crap. They'll give them the lowest paying job, they'll purposely underpay them, or they'll pay them exactly the minimum wage, even if the middle wage of what they pay. So you have somebody making $10 an hour, somebody making 20, they'll get 15, and then they'll treat them like crap while they're at work. And it's all for a sense of superiority. And that person has, no legal recourse at this stage. They can attempt to sue them, but they have to prove it. And, it's one of those things that's just, why are we going through all this when you could simply just have that person go, oh, I don't hire these people, and then have it go, oh, there's the bigot. We found the bigot. Put his name on a website right up there. Let him go out of business.
Drive him right out of business. Exactly.
So I just, and oftentimes I think a lot of it is, again, I'm reaching back to people don't want freedom. They want it in their own way. They want society to operate. But I think deep down, a lot of people are racist, and they're afraid that if the anti-discrimination law goes away, that they themselves, these Democrats, these liberals who are voting, will no longer have that protection. They will say something racist. They will say something stupid, and therefore they will be exposed. If you control the society, you prevent it from happening. You prevent yourself from doing it. If I can't do it, nobody else can, and if nobody else can do it, I won't do it. And I think that is part of it at the end of the day, is that by not fighting this law in Indiana, even those people don't live in Indiana, none of these people, by the way, that are fighting against it care. Like, they really don't care. It doesn't affect their lives. They emotionally care about it. Sure, like you seeing a hurt puppy on TV. That's how they care about it. But it doesn't affect them. They don't know really what it's like to live there. I mean, what's it like in Indiana growing up gay versus it is in San Francisco growing up gay? People in San Francisco say, oh, I know exactly how it is growing up gay. No, you don't. You grew up in San Francisco. You didn't grow up in Indiana. And people saying that I grew up in Indiana don't know how people in Arkansas, let's say, grew up, or don't know how people in Florida grew up. I mean, you didn't grow up in those areas. You don't know. You didn't grow up at the same time. You didn't grow up at the same time frame. I mean, how are you so smart that you can tell other people what to do? Why don't we just allow it to be all in the open so that we can actually find? And then those guys, let's say Indiana does turn out to have a huge section of people who hate gays. Let's say that 38% of the state wants to kill all the gays and another 52% of the state wants to lock them up all in prison, right? That's like a 90% of the state hates on gays, right? Don't you think that these guys that live there and these women that live there would like to know that so they can get the fuck out? I mean, I'm just saying, don't they want to know that when a cop pulls them over, that there's not a 90% chance that cop's going to just do something horrible to them because they hate them for being gay? I mean, don't people want to know this? Don't they want to not live in places? I mean, assuming that we still have the freedom to move around between the states that we want to, to get out of that situation. And I know income and poverty levels aside and all this about people moving and stuff, but for the people who do have the choice and have the ability, don't you think you'd want to give them some of this information? And how much harder is it when everyone's supposedly not discriminating? And then you turn around and you say the next minute, oh, everyone really is discriminating because of that Ferguson, Missouri thing. So which is it? Are the anti-discrimination laws not working? Are they working? Are they keeping it under wraps? I mean, you're all over the board on this.
Yeah, it reminds me of the war on drugs, to be honest with you, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. So what do you guys think out there? Do you like this law? Do you not like this law? Do you like the idea of businesses being able to make their decisions and run their business the way they see fit? Should they be able to discriminate against somebody just based on the color of their skin or their sexual preference? Let us know. Our website is at foolsforthought.com. Thank you for listening to this podcast. This was podcast number 11. We will be back with you next time for another exciting episode. Thank you and good day.